I have talked about Stefan Molyneaux on a few occasions. I've spoken about how he's essentially attempted to hijack any kind of pop culture thing that's going around and somehow turn it into some kind of racist or xenophobic demagoguery, like he did with Star Wars, the most recent Star Wars movie, saying that it was secretly about the end of the white race, even though, that just doesn't make sense, right? Anyways, so what we're going to be dissecting here is looking at Stefan Molyneaux back in the day, because he's been uploading videos and having a podcast for a very long time, if you didn't know. And we're going to look at what changed and what happened, because he's had a huge flip-flop between then and now. Now, at this time, he was a libertarian, and I don't know if he still considers himself a libertarian or not, but let's see what his views on immigration were prior to now, which was back in like 07 or 2010, around there. Check it out.
It's so patently idiotic to feel afraid of Mexicans. Mexicans! Undocumented, illegal, can't vote. Mexicans! They're your enemy? Please! This is so non-empirical, it's ridiculous, and I don't even know where to begin. It's such a load of crap to be worried about immigrants. Was it a bunch of wetbacks who were out there jabbering about WMDs at the UN? No. Was it a bunch of black brothers who declared war and invaded a sovereign, though horrible country for no reason? No. Is it the Chinese community or the Muslim community that is clamoring for the Patriot Act? No. It's pretty much people like you, for the most part. If you're a minority listening to this, yo, brother, perhaps you can teach me how to dance. But it's the whiteys. It's the whiteys from Harvard who are shredding your lives, who are enslaving your children, who are sending you to war, who are provoking the rat's nest of foreign dictatorships with troops stationed all over the world, who are funding the government, who are financing the planet, the state prison planet. They're the whiteys. And some Jews. But it's not Mexican illegals that are taking away your frickin' rights. The other way that I'd like to sort of approach this question, if you will indulge me for a few more minutes, is to picture empathy, right? Empathy is really at the root of a good number of principles, especially ethical or moral principles. And I'd like you to think about not how you look to immigrants or anything like that. I'd like you to imagine that you're born in Mexico. I'd like you to imagine that you're born in Mexico. Because being born in America is just a coincidence. Doesn't make you right, doesn't make you valuable, doesn't make you better, doesn't make you moral. Doesn't make any of those damn things. It's just a freaking coincidence. And you can't claim any rights based on where your mother happened to frickin' squat and drop. I mean, imagine if she'd been kidnapped and dropped off in Mexico just before you were born. I guess you'd be naturalized U.S. But whatever situation you could come up with, you happen to be born in Mexico. Maybe your mom donated some eggs to an infertile Mexican woman, and boom, your dad was down, got drunk, and you happen to be born in Mexico. Now, in Mexico, the standard of living is wretched. Mexico was the first communist country in the history of the world at the turn of the 20th century, and its standard of living has remained mostly unchanged for about 100 years. Now, I'd like you to picture knowing that there's no real difference between Mexicans and everybody else on the planet. I'd like you to consider the amount of violence that Mexicans are subjected to, such that their standard of living has remained mostly unchanged for about 100 years. Look at America, look at England, look at Canada, look at Sweden, look at Switzerland, look at Norway, look at, all of these sorts of places. Standard of living, 10, 20, 30 times improvement. Mexico, bing, flatlined. Why? Are they different? Are they lazy? No, of course not. Of course not. Fucking gun in the room. Huge motherfucking gun in the room. And it's like Soren's eye. They always got this gun pointed at them.
So that was a pretty good, argument, I would say. Especially the empathy part. I think that empathy is a huge reason why a lot of people support immigration. And I certainly, that's the main reason why I do is empathy, because I feel for people and the fact that they can't control what they're born into, and if they're in a very bad environment and they want to escape and work their ass off to, better their own lives as well as their kids and the people, their family, that's great. And they enrich our economy and our country as they come in and, work their ass off. Now, I basically came out of what he said and said, yeah, I pretty much agree that makes sense. That's a pretty good argument. Now, as you guys know, he was a huge Trump supporter, and Trump's main thing was building the wall, stopping immigration, especially illegal immigration. Now let's see what he says today about immigration. Check it out.
And of course, the people who've come to America legally, they're the ones most suffering from illegal immigration. And it is certainly my hope that their voice will prevail in their preferences. And the fragile edifice of Western empiricism, self-criticism, and voting above your own ethnic interest is going to prevail. Without it, we are not going to turn Mexico into America. We're going to turn America into Mexico, and a great and powerful light in the world will go out.
So, all right, Steph, want to go through with the...
Yeah, so 3 core principles of real immigration reform. 1, a nation without borders is not a nation. There must be a wall across the southern border. Now, a quarter of Mexico's population has entered into America. People claim that there are only 11 million illegal immigrants. That number has not budged since 2005. But if you extrapolate the growth in illegal immigration beforehand and factor into things like you can measure how many remittances are being sent back to Mexico, because in general, Mexico will get more money by taxing remittances being sent back than having workers in Mexico. So it's a great deal for the Mexican government to send people north and have the resources flow back south. But using a variety of calculations, some people have got to around 30 million illegal immigrants in the United States, which is, close to 10% of the population. And so
let's just pause on that 1 second, Steph. A quarter of the population of Mexico has moved to the United States. Let's pause on that for 1 second. Oh my God.
It is one of these like jaw-dropping statistics. I thought maybe it would be 8 or 10%, but 33%. Oh, sorry, 25%. 25% of the entire population of Mexico has moved to the United States. And of course, we'll get into, there's this myth that illegal immigrants can't get welfare and can't vote and so on. This is not true. These are just lies put out by the left and by a lot of libertarian outlets as well. Because libertarians are like, well, freedom of movement and so on. Sure, in an ideal world, where there's small to no government and none of this coercive welfare, but private charities and so on, it'd be wonderful to let everybody move wherever they wanted. That was the case in the 19th century. There was no such thing as a passport till the early part of the 20th century. You could just move and go wherever you wanted. That's a wonderful thing, but that ain't the world we're living in right now.
So as you guys see there was a very clear flip-flop by Stefan Molyneaux as to his political positions and his political ideology and his beliefs. Now, he went from being a libertarian who was principled and said, and had empathy and, freedom of movement and labor, which is something that they believe in. And there aren't a lot of, libertarians who I would say that are principled to kind of stick with something like that. But now he's a Trump supporter. Now, the question becomes, why did he flip-flop? And I have the answer for you very easily. There are a lot of videos of people who post videos making fun of him for e-begging. And the reason why, and this is the reason why so many people, you'll see ideologies flip, right? We've talked about Dave Rubin, right? We talked about how Dave Rubin, prior to getting Koch dollars, was on TYT. He was a liberal, and he supported Bernie Sanders, who he himself dubbed Bernie Sanders as a socialist. So, money, 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 and that's what it came down to with Stefan Molyneaux. In order to gain more, payers and patrons and donors and things like that, he decided to flip-flop his ideology. He started riding the wave of Donald Trump, who was massively anti-immigration, even though Donald Trump and his policies and ideas were in direct violation of the libertarian convictions and principles. So essentially what he has done is he has sacrificed his principles and his political convictions, and a lot of these being moral and ethical convictions, as he stated himself. And he has decided that money is worth more. So he sold out. He basically changed his ideology, which is basically the definition of selling out. He changed his ideology in order to make more money, and it's really embarrassing. And anytime you see a video from that dude, know that he's not really trying to defend any positions because he has some kind of convictions. He just wants the money and the popularity, and that's why he became a Trump supporter, because the libertarian wave on YouTube, as you can see with a lot of libertarian channels, they're really dead because it's, a lot of the stuff is really stupid, and so it's really within a tight-knit community that you can see. So he wasn't satisfied with that, and therefore he decided to change. Also, something else that was really big, and I might talk about this in another segment, is he had a lot of empathy for people in Iraq and Muslims, and people who are Muslims in other Middle Eastern countries, and obviously he's a Trump supporter. So let me know what you guys think. This is what I thought, something very interesting, and I want to let you guys know, because anytime you see a Stefan Molyneaux video, take it with a grain of salt, because he's just doing it for the money. He doesn't give a fuck about what's actually going on. He's just trying to make some money.